Okay, guys, good morning. It's Firearms Friday, and we're going to be talking about the verdict. I mean, because come on, what else is in the news right now? Holy shit. Well, there's one other thing in the news right now, and it's worth taking a little hope. We got a SCOTUS decision to discuss too, but first, we're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into that Trump verdict a bit. So I hope you got your coffee ready because you're going to need something to pour all that bourbon into this morning. Let's do this. All right. Good morning, everybody. So, okay, I'm going to talk about this for just a second because I had to use the standard Firearms Friday plate this morning for the thumbnail because something's wrong with Photoshop. Come on. Oh, so as soon as the show is over this morning, I've got to put off my original plan to finish that shed we've been working on for a couple of days to deal with flipping Adobe. Okay, whatever. I'll be honest though, if it looks like Adobe is just going to keep giving me problems like that, I might just have to stop paying them and find an alternative editing platform, which is going to hurt because I've spent the last 10 years becoming an absolute Adobe black belt. So, anywho, good morning. They did it. And if I'm being honest, Trump being found guilty on 34 counts should come as a surprise to no one. And I brought up the thumbnail thing because I was looking for images to use for the thumbnail this morning, and I was going to use this image before Photoshop broke on me, and I wanted to share it with you because I noticed something that I found very interesting and very, very telling about the case itself. And oh damn, now I don't know where boom, there it is. That's the image I wanted to share. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys this image in just a moment. To summarize, Donald Trump has just been found guilty of felony conviction on 34 misdemeanor counts. The misdemeanor counts were only able to have been brought by a corrupt prosecutor who ran on the platform. I don't know what I'm going to get him on, but I will be the prosecutor that gets Donald Trump put in jail. They charged him with 34 misdemeanor financial crimes after the statute of limitations has passed. So understand, this is the financial equivalent to somebody coming after you 10 years after the fact for a handful of parking tickets. and saying, well, these particular parking tickets, there's a reason there's a statute of limitations, guys, right? Oh, you parked on the wrong side of the street 10 years ago. Who gives a shit? Have you parked on the wrong side of the street in the last 10? No. Okay. The 34 misdemeanors, which have been upgraded to a felony, required a felony upgrade in order to be brought to begin with. And in pursuit of the conviction on these 34 misdemeanor charges, they have not, even now that there's a conviction, they still have not named the felony which is being used as the predicate to upgrade the misdemeanors to a felony. It went so far, as we talked about yesterday, that the judge instructed the jury, you do not even need to agree on what the felony charge was. 4 of you can say that it was election interference. 4 of you can say that it was an additional financial charge that's somehow also a felony, and 4 of you can say that he did something else entirely. You don't even need to agree on what the underlying predicate charge was, right? Sounds kind of like, go back to 2017, 2018, the obstruction charge, for which, there was never an underlying obstruction of what? Trying to obstruct what? This is a classic trick that cops like to pull, right? To arrest somebody for obstruction without there having been another crime. Oh, well, we're investigating. What are you investigating? I've done nothing wrong. Well, we need to see your ID. No, I've got a Fourth Amendment right. I don't have to give you my ID unless you've got reasonable articulable suspicion that I've committed a crime. Oh, well, now you're obstructing. I'm obstructing what? What's the crime that you're investigating? We're investigating you. Okay, no, that's circular, and it's illegal. You can fuck right off with that. So, what I find especially interesting, nobody should be surprised that he was convicted. And that is because an obviously corrupt prosecutor brought charges which should never have been brought under the law. The law says you cannot bring these charges. They made up some bullshit and pretended like there was a legal justification. The judge went against every objection of the defense and went for every objection of the prosecution. And I do mean every single one, without fail. He would not even hear defense positions. He would just shut them down. And this all happened in New York, which is a corrupt city, a grossly corrupt city, where if you happen to be black and committing a crime, the more likely case is that you will simply go free. While if you're a white man who happens to kill a bad guy in the course of protecting other people's lives, Daniel Penny, you'll be convicted of murder. It's a psychotic city. And if I haven't said this enough recently, let me say it again. Get the hell out of the cities. There is nothing there for you. There is only cancer and death. Get out. Move out to the country and buy a bunch of bullets and beans. Excuse me. And here's the image. I want you to keep this in mind as we go forward. In New York City, which is a D+23 city, a jury of his peers, an impartial jury of Donald Trump's peers. Really? Really? Show you something. This is a courtroom sketch of the jury. Noticed anything? I mean, other than apparently Bernie Sanders is sitting on the jury. Obviously, this isn't Bernie. This is some other bald guy with white patches that just happens to look like it in a shitty sketch. But here's the thing that I noticed that just really got my attention. Every one of them's wearing a mask. Every one of them on the jury is wearing a mask. Now, I want to be clear about this. It is not the case that the courtroom required everybody in the courtroom to wear masks. And I can offer you evidence of that by simply bringing up any other courtroom sketch. Look, here's the judge, no mask. One of the attorneys, Donald Trump, right? The court recorder, no masks. Any other shot, no masks. No masks, no masks, no masks. Bailiff, no mask. Right? You'd think if it was a court rule that was imposed on people that the bailiffs would be wearing masks. See here, one of the bailiffs apparently looks like he's wearing a mask. The other one isn't. No masks, no masks, no masks, no masks. Just the jury. Only the jury are all wearing masks. What does that tell us? We were told that an impartial jury was selected. Mr. C says they're hiding those faces. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it at all. Because really, unless you're somebody like Donald Trump, it's very difficult to look at a court sketch and positively identify a person. Like I said, the one looks like he's Bernie Sanders. Highland Husky has it right. They're rabid Democrats. These are true believers. These are people who believed the science until the science said, oops, we were wrong. These are people who still believe that the vaccine is 100% effective. These are people who still believe that if you didn't get the vaccine, you did it purely because you're crazy and malicious. These are people who are best avoided. All right, and I'll try not to spend too much time on the mask tirade, but I want to say this about masks. If you see somebody out in public today wearing a mask, avoid that person. That person is a threat. That person is dangerous. That person is dangerously deranged or sick. So what we know about the masks is that viruses are tiny. The mask will not protect you from the virus. At best, if someone else is sick and they very politely wear a mask to go out in public, which, back up, if you're sick and contagious and you've chosen to go out in public for any reason other than to seek emergency medical attention, you're already a dangerous and irresponsible person. If you have a contagious illness, stay your ass at home. But if you're sick and you're one of these people, you wear the mask, the best we can say is that because the sick person is wearing a mask, there is a significantly decreased chance that they will cough or sneeze directly into your open mouth. That's about the best you can hope for them. If you see a person wearing a mask today, that person is a deranged lunatic and you should avoid them at all costs. Do not speak to them. Do not engage with them. Do not do business with them. Avoid them. They are more dangerous than an armed thug with malicious intent. Sergeant Major points out some of the jurors are lawyers and others work for leftist organizations that know they are on the jury. They would have ruined their career to acquit. Correct. They were chosen precisely because They were already compromised, each and every one of these jurors. And that's why you see them all wearing the masks. They are sycophant, diehard dedicants to the Democrat Party. They're essentially Communist Party members. And what amounts to an absolute show trial. So I've got this article from CNN, and of course I'm going to CNN for the article because we want to see how they're going to try to spin. CNN writes, what happens now that Trump has been convicted in his hush money criminal case? That's another thing, is they keep referring to it as the hush money case. Let's be clear. Okay, here's the thing about hush money case. Assuming that what actually happened is that Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels and then paid her hush money to sign a non-disclosure agreement in order that she would not discuss that affair for one of two reasons. Either because he was concerned that it would cost him a lot of money when Melania said, hey, you broke the prenup and I'm taking all your money, or because it would damage him going into the 2016 election. Right? Those are the only two reasons that exist for which he might have paid the hush money. Both of which just seem a little absurd on their face now, because we know that Stormy has lied about their sexual encounter. We still don't know if it did or didn't happen. What we do know is that Stormy has said it happened, and then she said, I lied, it didn't happen, and then she said, I lied, it did happen. So, since she has recanted twice, we do not know if it did or didn't happen, but we do know that Stormy lied about it. So we can take from that at a minimum, the entire NDA scheme was an extortion racket cooked up between Stormy and probably Michael Cohen and a few others. We now know that Cohen was actively embezzling from Donald Trump in connection to that, because he admitted that on the stand. He admitted that under oath. Oh, excuse me, guys. I'm still getting over this bit of congestion from being sick last week. It's still a bit of a fight there. So, but there's all that. When they say it's a hush money trial, remember, assuming that Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels and then paid her hush money to sign an NDA, that's not a crime. It may be shady. It may be something that we would prefer our favorite president never did. Assuming he even did it, which I have doubts now because of the record of Stormy's credibility and Cohen's credibility. I'm not even entirely certain at this point that there was ever an NDA. I am. I'm being a little hyperbolic there. To be clear, there was an NDA at some point. And Stormy Daniels did break the NDA, and she does owe Donald Trump several $1 million because the court found that she did indeed break the NDA. So, but I'm not convinced that Donald Trump had sex with her. I think it's much more likely, given the facts that we have now, that she attempted to extort him and then decided she wanted to get more out of it. Never forget, brother says, wait, our favorite president isn't JFK? No, brother. The God King all day, baby. No new wars. I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole right now, though. But I appreciate you. Damn. I'm not going down a rabbit hole, but you did derail me. So assuming all that, we know that that him paying her hush money was never a crime. Thank you, brother. We know that him paying her the hush money was never a crime. What they allege is that somehow he fiddled with the financial records to hide the fact that he paid the hush money. And for some reason, he did that 34 times. Right? That's what each of the 34 charges is a different count of incorrect business filing. Again, a misdemeanor that is way past its statute of limitations. Right? It's psychotic for the charges to have even been brought. But here we are. And now he's been found guilty. That's the 34th. And again, these are misdemeanor charges that are being charged illegitimately as felonies, just so that the Democrats can get that headline, convicted felon. A New York jury convicting Donald Trump on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records brought the former president's weeks-long trial to a close, but ushered in a new phase of the historic case. By the way, if he's sentenced to the maximum on all 34 charges, he'll spend up to 4 years per count, with a maximum of 20 years in prison. Now, in the unique position of being the first former U.S. president convicted of a felony, Trump faces the possibility of a prison sentence or probation for his crimes stemming from a hush money payment scheme he helped facilitate ahead of the 2016 presidential election. This is speculation at best. Trump, who is known for mounting lengthy appeals of court rulings against him, is also likely to appeal the conviction, obviously. Here's what to know about the case following Trump's conviction. Set sentencing for 10 a.m. on July 11th. Now, I'll grant that's actually a pretty quick turnaround for the sentencing on a case of this scale. Merchan can sentence Trump to probation or up to 4 years on each count. And we're talking about Merchan here. We're talking about the most visibly corrupt judge that history has ever seen. Right? This Merchan is, I cannot think of another judge who, and y'all, I'm one that follows this stuff. I cannot think of another case with a judge who is more openly and visibly and obviously corrupt than Merchan. More obviously personally motivated against the defendant than Merchan. I would be absolutely gobsmacked if Merchan doesn't give Trump, it doesn't sentence him to the absolute maximum. That's just what he's going to do. And I'm as certain of that as I was certain that Trump would be found guilty, based on the fact that the jury was so clearly rigged against him. It says, for now, the former president will remain out of prison as he awaits his sentencing. Okay, yes, because it's a nonviolent crime. And this year, it says that Trump has consistently appealed court rulings against him in an effort to delay the proceedings or eventually land his case before a court that may side with him. This New York case is no different. Of course he's continued to mount appeals. Every single case that's been brought. Oh, sure, Trump's been charged with 95 felonies or whatever it is now, right? And every single one of these cases has been transparently corrupt, transparently and onerously bullshit. So let's just think about this for a moment. Being a convicted felon is not a bar to office. Even being incarcerated on election day does not legally remove Donald Trump from the running. He is still running for president. And I think that unless the Democrats steal this election as well, which is obviously on the table. They could just pull a 2020 again and say, you know what? We're losing. We're obviously losing. So everybody stop counting until we can print more ballots. But unless they do that, there's no way Trump loses his election. There's no way Donald Trump loses a fair election in November. Let me bolster that point. As soon as the verdict was announced yesterday, Trump's donor website crashed after he started asking fans for money following his guilty verdict in New York. Tim Pool said that he immediately donated the maximum. Right, so many Americans were moved to donate to President Trump's campaign that the When Read pages went down. We're working on getting the website back online as quickly as possible. Stay strong. Excuse me. So literally, America is so interested and so for, the entire country is so entirely on the side of Donald Trump that as soon as it was clear that this banana republic has decided to kangaroo court his ass out of the presidency, the American voter, the American taxpayer said, I'm putting my money where his mouth is. In such extraordinary numbers that they crashed his website. And now this isn't the Obamacare website that was put together by a bunch of shithead Democrats. This is the When Read website that has been handling millions of dollars in donations for years and doing it effectively for a long time. It's not like they just set up this website overnight, ill-prepared for the demand that was coming at it. There was just that much demand. People clamoring over each other to give Donald Trump money to help him win a campaign. So, I want to take a look at Twitter on some of this for a minute, and then I want to talk about that SCOTUS decision that I mentioned earlier, because it's actually, believe it or not, relevant to this case. So, Brian Krasenstein, an irrepentant shitburger, says, breaking, the verdict is in, guilty on all counts, Trump is officially a convicted felon. You are either now planning to vote for a convicted felon for president or you're not. I am, absolutely, apparently planning to vote for a convicted felon for president. Stop pretending that the side that is not voting for the felon is the crazy one. Brian, sweetheart, it's not that you're the side that's not voting for the felon. It's that you're the side that is voting for the unnamed co-conspirators. You're voting for the big guy. You're voting for sex trafficking. You're voting for weak borders, expanded welfare states. You're voting for infanticide. You're voting for China. You're voting for $4 gas. You're voting for $8 milk, for $7 eggs. You're voting for the collapse of the United States of America. That's what you're voting for, Brian. We've got 4 years of Donald Trump versus 3.5 years of Joe Biden to look at and say, let's see. Mean tweets, world peace, and cheap gas versus World War III, $4 gas, and true unashamed pressure. And Batacalf care. And mixing up enemies and allies. Escalating tension. Cheap gas and world peace versus $4 gas and World War III. Those are your choices. It's not convicted felon or incompetent senior. cheap gas and world peace versus economic collapse and World War III. Those are your options. He says, you changed, not the American justice system. That's just false. You can't be that dumb. You changed, not the American justice system? Let's talk about that. Not the American justice system, huh? In the E. Jean Carroll case, the jury found that Donald Trump did not rape E. Jean Carroll. Instead, in a case which was only available to be brought because a specific New York law was passed which erased the statute of limitations on her accusation, Donald Trump was found to be liable, not guilty, liable, and this is an important distinction, of sexual assault. Here's why that's an important distinction. Because they were able to come to that conclusion on her flawed and fallacious testimony alone without evidence. Guilty of rape, they could not do without the evidence. On the evidence, we have a woman who told a story that was straight out of the script of a Special Victims Unit episode and described herself wearing a dress that did not exist at the time in the decade in which she says that the event occurred, but she can't remember when. In a Bergdorf Goodman's that happened to be empty at the time, where there were no security cameras at all, apparently, to record the event. And even if there were, it doesn't matter because she can't give you a time date stamp to go back and review a period as short as a couple of years, let alone the date it happened. So, Brian, not the American justice system, they literally changed the law on statute of limitations to allow this psychopath who named her cat Vagina to bring charges without evidence where she made clearly false claims of evidence, right? A woman who went on television and said, in the context of discussing her own allegations, said that rape is sexy, and that's what women believe. Women think that rape is sexy. That's a quote from E. Jean Carroll, the woman who went after Donald Trump. And then she sued him again for defamation and won, which is psychotic, and should tell you ahead of time before this hush money case even started, the hush money trial even started. She sued him again for defamation because he tweeted, "I'm innocent, I didn't do this." He didn't say anything about her in the tweet. He said, "I didn't do the crime. I'm innocent of the crime." And she went after him for defamation, claiming that he, who is a public figure, and therefore a requirement for it to be defamation, is that they prove that he defamed her character falsely and with malicious intent to cause her harm. But no, Brian, it's not the system that changed. Fucking shit pickle. Right? And then let's look at, there's a couple more that I wanted to look at here. Maxine Waters. There's Tim Pool. I just donated the maximum to Donald Trump. Good. Maxine Waters says, Maxine, go and confront them, go and stop them in restaurants and gas stations, get in their faces, make them uncomfortable. Maxine calling for violence. Waters says, Trump, shut your mouth. You talk about saving the Constitution? You're the one who has disrespected the Constitution, and you have supporters who believe we should get rid of the Constitution. Okay, Maxine Waters is one of those. Listen, there is not a Democrat currently who does not believe in the abolition of the Second Amendment. That's a fact. You cannot vote Democrat without being in support of abolishing the Second Amendment, and in many cases also the First. These are people who are acting in stark contrast to the Constitution, openly and without consequence. For that reason alone, Donald Trump needs to get into office. And I'm loath to admit it, but I'm a little nervous about the way that this election goes, because I'm afraid that Trump's going to get elected, and he's going to pull a 2016 where he doesn't lock her up. Right? What we're seeing now, the absolute corruption of the justice system, there's only one way forward, and that is basically every politician, Republican and Democrat, needs to be tried for every possible crime that can be attached to them. I would be absolutely over the moon if we could lock up every single elected official in the country for legitimate charges, right? I'm not even talking about kangaroo court shit with Donald Trump. I'm talking about campaign finance fraud, right? Go back to Dinesh D'Souza for a moment. Dinesh was convicted of campaign finance fraud. What he did is he had made the maximum donation to a politician, and then he told a friend to make the maximum donation to the same politician, and he paid the friend back the amount that the friend had donated. And even in the case when Dinesh was convicted and served a sentence in jail for it, they admitted that it's basically common practice that everybody with money does this shit. They make the maximum contribution to their candidate, and then they have a couple of friends make the maximum donation too, and they pay them back for it. It's a common practice among all of them. You've probably never seen a politician speak who hasn't done something of the sort, who hasn't done the same thing. It's something that everybody does. But Dinesh was the only one that got hit for it because he was outspoken and effectively outspoken. I want to see every politician that's done anything like that convicted for it. I want to see every politician that has been engaged in insider trading convicted for it. I want to see every politician that has made a false statement in furtherance of their campaign convicted for fraud. Every single one. And I do mean every single one. Right? Bragg should be convicted for defrauding the American people. Mershon should be convicted under 242 on Trump's gag orders, right? I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a little more detail in just a second here when we get to the SCOTUS case. But what Mershon, the judge in the Trump hush money case, did with the gag orders was a clear violation of Trump's First Amendment rights. That would be a violation under Section 242, suppression of civil liberties under color of law. Mershon is a criminal, and he committed his crime in clear view of the public. Excuse me. So, she's just psychotic there. And then we've got Pelosi. This moment is a somber one for America. Trial by a jury of peers is a fundamental principle of democracy which must be respected. Nancy, how about the law? "34 misdemeanors converted to felonies without an underlying crime being established or even argued. In the middle of a presidential election, prosecuted by obviously corrupt actors. This is naked election interference. Nancy, how about the law? Mustn't that be respected? This woman doesn't give a shit about the law, the Constitution, or democracy. She hates them all and would as soon repeal them as not. The psychopathy of that is just... We got Hutchison says, it's not easy to see a former president and the presumptive GOP nominee convicted of felony crimes, but the jury verdict should be respected. Why? Why is it that we should respect the verdict of a jury of obvious sycophantic psychopaths who are all wearing masks? I'm telling you, when you see the mask, walk away. They're dangerous. They are dangerous. Wow. I'm gonna have to skip right over the Hodge twins this morning. I mean, I'm gonna like them and I'm gonna retweet them, but I'm not gonna share that one on the show. Go check out X and see what the Hodge twins said. I love those brothers, y'all. I was watching Steven Crowder several years ago. This is one of the funniest things I ever saw. He had the Hodge twins on, and he introduced them, and one of the twins said, "We put the kook." If you don't know, the Hodge twins are a pair of conservative black comedians, and one of them said, "Yeah, we put the coon in conservative," and fucking Crowder says, "But there's only one O in conservative," and the other twin said, "Yeah, but there's two of us." I mean, that's some hilarious quick wit right there. Oh. Yeah. So, let me get to the case of let me get to the SCOTUS case now and talk about how that ties in. I kind of want to do some more of the Twitter stuff, but we're already over by almost 15 minutes, so we bring this up. It is Firearms Friday. I want to talk about something firearms related. U.S. Supreme Court boosts NRA and free speech fight with New York official. Most interesting in this case, well, there's a lot interesting in this case. I find it very interesting in this particular case that it was Justice Sonia Sotomayor, right? The wise Latina woman, right? I mean, make no mistake, I despise Sotomayor. If you don't remember, she's the diversity hire that explicitly said, I think that a wise Latina woman is better equipped to make sound legal judgments than an old white man, right? She's an avowed racist, a hard left psychotic Democrat. But I find it interesting that in this case, where the NRA is suing over free speech rights, that it is in fact Sotomayor that authored the decision, and it 9-0. We've talked about it before. The 9-0 cases are actually more common than you might think. And it doesn't seem that way because most of the 9-0 cases are such obvious punts that they just don't get covered in the news. The ones that get covered are like your Roe v. Wade, your Obergefell's, where the court is split and it's just one justice that might make, like, the right's going to go right. The left is going to go left. And what you don't know yet is how Roberts is going to justify betraying everybody and still pretend like he's a conservative at heart. Excuse me. But the case is actually pretty simple. This New York Vulo what I forget her name. I forget her full name. Yeah, here it is. So the NRA sued Maria Vullo, superintendent of New York's Department of Financial Services, arguing essentially that she had used her authority, her legal authority, to make it more difficult for the NRA to do business, most especially with banks. Ultimately, the critical takeaway is that the First Amendment prohibits government officials from wielding their power selectively to punish or suppress speech directly or, as alleged here, through private intermediaries, Sotomayor wrote. This is actually pretty huge, because you have to understand that the argument for social media censorship for a long time has been a private platform. But we know now from the Twitter files and the Facebook files and the like, that the federal government actively had agencies in contact with and making overt pushes to say, hey, we want you to censor X, Y, and Z. And they would voice it carefully to make it sound like, oh, we just wanted you to know that this person said this thing. Right? That fifth generation shit we've talked about with Lois Lerner shuffling the conservative 501c3s and churches to the bottom of the stack. They're applying for their 501c3 and C4 statuses back in the Obama era. That was a 242 violation. Right? I know I talk about that one a lot, but it's happening a lot. Government officials actively interfering with the civil liberties of individual private citizens. Right? The suppression of civil liberties under color of law. In its current incarnation, as we live today, virtually every interaction between a government agent and a private citizen is a violation of Section 242. Right? If a cop tells you not to cross the street without an extremely compelling reason, this is a violation of your civil liberties. If a politician says, shut the fuck up, to an individual personally, that is a violation of your civil liberties. That is a government agent attempting to curtail your free speech as an agent of the government. That's what it means to be under the color of law, as an agent of the governing body. Virtually every interaction that you have, every negative interaction that a citizen can have with a government agency or agent, is their rights being violated by that agency under 242. Unless you have committed a crime. And even then, we need to be taking a hard look at the body of law that describes what crime is, because there is a great deal of it that the majority of us do not agree should be criminalized, that has been criminalized by corrupt actors in the government. Right? A good example to discuss on this is like scheduled drugs. Right? I've talked about this a few times in the past. I won't harp on it too much this morning, but this is one of those things where, like, I can almost get on board with it being illegal to use drugs because it's such a bad idea, that so many drugs are so terrible and dangerous and bad for you. I can almost get there, but not quite. And so I'm not a big proponent of, I think weed should be legal because I want to grow a bunch of dope on my property and just wake and bake and smoke dope all the time. Not so much. But there's no authority in the Constitution for the government to control the substances. And so for those laws to exist is an overreach of government authority, and that must be curtailed at every available opportunity. So I'm not looking to grow a bunch of pot and stay stoned all the time. And honestly, I would prefer that nobody else does. But just because I have a personal preference does not mean that the government should enforce that on other people. It's when your personal preferences become a threat to my general liberty that the government has any business at all, right? Your rights end at the tip of my nose, right? You have all the rights in the world. You can do anything you want until you hurt somebody. Theoretically, like I've said a few times this week, theoretically, the Republican, the conservative position should be, you have unlimited liberty until your free exercise of activity causes someone harm. The libertarian position is, right, that's what the Republican position ought to be, but it's poorly articulated. The libertarian position is, we don't care if you hurt anybody, do whatever you want. And then the Democrat position is, it's not worth doing, it's not worth being happy if you don't get to hurt somebody on the way. If there's no harm, then it wasn't good. Democrats will vote against things that they want to have happen just so that they can push it down the road and find a way to make it also cause harm to someone. And that's not just because they're malicious. That's part of it. But another part of it is that they're a large part of the Democrat voting strategy is to expand poverty. The more people in poverty, the more people they can get voting for government benefits. That's a huge part of their electoral strategy, is to cause harm, to create the problem, right? They're essentially, you know, the whole Democrat platform is essentially the conspiracy between Pfizer and the Wuhan lab, right? They create the disease so that they can sell the cure. That's what the Democrat Party is. They create poverty so that they can sell welfare. That's their whole platform, their whole voting strategy. And I say it's their whole voting strategy. It's not their whole electoral strategy, it's their whole voting strategy, because you got to remember, there's a whole other part to their electoral strategy that includes vote harvesting and vote suppression and ballot falsification that is just clear and just nakedly present as part of their activities. So, I am half an hour over. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it there, because y'all, I got shit to do. Funny story, I moved out in the country and kind of semi-retired and got all this beautiful land, and I got shit to do. But I'm rapidly approaching being able to take a little time and just relax again. So, thanks for tuning in this morning, guys. We love you. Y'all be safe this weekend. Don't drive drink, don't fry bacon naked. We love you, and we will see you on Monday.